Hello learners, let us today examine the short story 50 Grand written by Ernest Hemingway. 50 Grand was first published in the Atlantic Monthly in 1927. Later, it was included in the collection Men Without Women in 1927. The story is significant because it is one of the first texts where Hemingway uses competitive sport to comment on the behavior of human beings. The story deals with a boxing bout between Jack Brennan and Jimmy Walcott. Unlike most of Hemingway's short stories, 50 Grand doesn't make use of an omniscient narrator. 50 Grand describes the event that surrounded a fictional boxing match. Hemingway's love for sport is well documented and he liked fishing, baseball, boxing, hunting, etc. While Hemingway is one of the best exponents of the art of storytelling, very few writers have used popular competitive sport as effectively as Hemingway to provide deep insights into human society. Hemingway ranks alongside Sir Thomas Hughes, P.G. Wodehouse as one of the best exponents of using sport as a literary trope. Hemingway is a precursor to Bernard Malamud, who wrote The Natural, and Philip Roth, the author of the great American novel, and other 20th century American writers who carefully constructed their fiction around the world of sports. However, Hemingway seems to be the only writer to have situated his fiction around a variety of sports including boxing, bullfighting, fishing and hunting. Before we move on to a detailed discussion of the 50 Grand, let us examine the significance of short story as a literary genre. While stories have always been a part of our lives since the inception of human society, the history of short story as a literary genre is just a few centuries old. The short story became popular only towards the second half of the 19th century. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe and O. Henry from America, Oscar Wilde and Somerset Maugham from England, Pushkin from Russia and Rabindranath Tagore from India were some of the first exponents of short story. Short story, as the name indicates, is a short piece of fiction. Short stories are usually time bound and have a single narrator and discuss events around a single event, character or a period in time. The narration in most short stories is linear and the narrator is either the protagonist or is a third person omniscient narrator. The time period in which the plot unfurls is mostly limited to a few days or weeks. The time period is dependent on the incident or the period that is being described. Unlike a novel, in a short story, the author has little scope to develop the characters of the protagonist. Most short stories, like majority of the works of fiction, are a commentary on individuals and the societies they emerge from. They describe an individual's struggle against nature, against society, against another individual and against herself. Short stories are also reflective of the author's moral codes and beliefs. Most of the writers provide a twist towards the end of the short story. The twist, more often than not, underlines the irony of human condition. 50 Grand is one of the finest examples of short story writing as it is short, describes the struggle of an aging athlete and has an ironic twist in the end. Carlos Baker, one of the biographers of Hemingway, once commented that Hemingway's fiction, which is based on sports, reveals more about the athlete than about the sport itself. Before we discuss the short story in detail, let us take a quick look at the backdrop of the text. Ernest Miller Hemingway, an American-born English writer, was born in 1899. He was one of the most active of 20th century American writers. Hemingway began his career as a journalist. He was adventurous and liked outdoor life. He served as an ambulance driver during the end of the First World War. During his 2-month stint in the war, he was seriously wounded and was hospitalized. The injuries did not inhibit him from reporting during the Spanish Civil War. His love for sport was such that during his stay in Spain, despite the Civil War, he found time to observe bullfighting from close quarters. The sport was the inspiration for the story The Capital of the World. One of the first short stories that Hemingway wrote, A Matter of Color, which was published in 1916 in his high school literary magazine, dealt with sport. To be precise, A Matter of Color dealt with boxing match and today is read as the precursor of the 50 Grand. By 20th century, many authors including Arthur Conan Doyle and P.G. Wodehouse wrote on boxing. In the initial decades of the 20th century, when popular sports including baseball, football and boxing began to emerge as cultural industries, there were rumors that sportsmen often fixed the results of some of the matches. In the 20th century America, gambling on the outcome of competitive sports contests was not illegal. So, many of the spectators gambled on the outcome of sports contests. Some of the athletes were supposed to have deliberately underperformed as to decide the outcome of the competition. Most athletes were paid poorly and the money that sportsmen stood to gain from fixing the result of a match was much higher than the prize money. Scholars attribute that the match between Jack Britton and Mickey Waller, which was staged in November of 1922 and was rumored to have been a fixed one, was the inspiration for 50 Grand. It is said that Hemingway never saw the match. However, the author makes use of similar names for the characters. Brennan, like Jack Britton, is an aged boxer who is fighting against a much younger opponent in a high-profile match. Hence, it is believed that Hemingway could have sought the details from the newspapers. While it is difficult to identify the source that inspired the short story, one cannot deny that Hemingway's short story addresses the issues of athletes' insecurity. Now, let us examine the plot of 50 Grand. Often, the results of various matches are fixed as to help the organizers, the owners of gambling houses and the athletes make money. It is widely believed that real life incidents inspired Ernest Hemingway write 50 Grand. Jack Brennan is a reigning welterweight champion. He is residing at Danny Hogan's Health Farm in New Jersey. At the health farm, he is struggling to get in shape for his upcoming boxing fight with Jimmy Walcott. Jerry Doyle is Jack's trainer and attendant. Jerry Doyle is also the narrator of the story. Jack is not happy with the prospect of the fight. He does not adjust to life at the health farm. He admits that he misses his family and that he is mostly sore and grouchy. During the story, it is revealed that Jack has gambled in the past. As Jerry and Hogan talk about racehorses, Jack informs that he has gambled in the past but has stopped gambling because he began to lose money. Jack knows that he is not in the best shape for the bout. He repeatedly asks Jerry Doyle what he thinks of his fitness. Jerry replies, "Well, you can't tell. You got a week to get back into form." When Jack insists on a straight answer, Jerry says, "You are not right." Jerry's admission inspires Jack to reveal more about his condition. Jack reveals that he is unable to sleep despite being tired because he misses his wife. Jack also lists out the issues that worry him. He is worried about his property, his family, and his kids. He says he sometimes thinks about the fight. Hence, we get to know the fight is not a top priority for Jack. The day before the fight, John Collins, who is Jack's manager, arrives at the farm. John is accompanied by two friends, Steinfeld and Morgan. It is not clear what they have discussed, but in the evening, after a few drinks, Jack advised Jerry to put his money on Walcott. He admits that he himself has bet 50 grand on Walcott. Jack justifies the act to himself. He says, "It ain't crooked. How can I beat him? Why not make money on it?" That night, he sleeps peacefully. The next day, after breakfast, Jack and Jerry take the train to New York. Jack wants Jerry to stay with him as he wants to get his money's worth out of the hotel's double room. Jack and Jerry begin to play cribbage. They are joined by John. Jack wins the cribbage session. In the post-dinner cribbage session, Jack wins another $2.50. On the day of the fight, the boxing ring at Madison Center Garden is full. The crowds enjoy the verbal exchange between Jimmy and Jack. However, Jack does not indulge Jimmy and his replies are very abrupt. As the match begins, Jack fights earnestly. Jack repeatedly connects his left fist with Walcott's face. By the 7th round, Jack is tired and Walcott begins to pummel Jack's torso. It is evident that Jimmy has trained better. By the 11th round, Jimmy has complete control over the bout. John Collins tells Jack that Jimmy will win, but Jack wants to last through the 12th round. He doesn't want to forfeit till the round is completed. He wants to finish it off right to please himself. Jimmy delivers a painful low blow on Jack. It is a foul. Had Jack gone down, Jimmy would have been disqualified and Jack would have won the match. But Jack, who is in obvious pain, still stands. Jack tells the referee that Jimmy's blows were accidental. Jack walks back towards Jimmy and starts landing several bodily punches. He hits Jimmy twice below the belt. Jimmy falls down and wins the match on a foul. Later, Jack apologizes to Jimmy and congratulates him. It is a very famous win for Jimmy. The crowd is happy as most of them have put their money on Jimmy. Inside the dressing room, Jack comments, "It is funny how fast you can think when it means that much money." Now, let us examine Jack's character. Hemingway used competitive sport as a trope to comment on the nature of individuals. Jack, the protagonist in 50 Grand, is a complex character. 50 Grand gives an insight into the psyche of an elite sportsman, replete with his insecurities and idiosyncrasies. The story reveals that soft, sensitive, intelligent interior lies hidden beneath the burly, rugged, masculine exterior of the sportsman. The athlete, Hemingway seems to suggest, is as vulnerable to the contingencies of life as any of us. In the 20th century America, champions of popular sport emerged as celebrities and were feted as public icons. They came to symbolize pride, confidence, and strength. Elite athletes in the United States are supposed to live extravagant lives. 50 Grand seems to provide an alternate portrayal of the elite sportsman as a not so fit, insecure, miserly, and quick witted individual. Jack is clearly past his prime and is fighting an informed, young, fit, active Jimmy. We are also informed that Jack is tired and is not motivated at the thought of participating in a bout that is bound to lose. As we begin to attribute Jack's lack of interest to his age and his physical shape, the author also provides us an insight into Jack's psyche. Jack confesses that he is insecure. He is insecure about his family, about his wealth, about his kids, about the investments, and so on and so forth. He also reveals that he has gambled in the past. He has a gambler instinct. He has bet a lot of money on horse races before and he's lost it. Thus, the author ensures that the boxer's image, unlike that of a champion athlete, is reduced to that of a normal human being. The evening before the match, Jack confesses that since he has no chance of winning the bout, he has put his money on Jimmy. He comes across as a helpless, resigned individual who was reconciled to the state of affairs. Later, when Jack and Jerry travel to New York, we see another of Jack's facets. We come across him as a stingy man who refuses to tip Bruce adequately. In the hotel, he insists on a cheap room. He bargains with the hotel clerk and insists on Jerry staying with him as he wants to get his money's worth at the hotel. Despite winning some money in the cribbage session, Jack declares that John would pay for the dinner. Jack's persona comes across as an antithesis to the idea of celebrated athletes as spendthrifts who indulge in conspicuous consumption as to indicate the wealth they possess. During the boxing bout, another of Jack's facets is revealed. Despite being underprepared, he gives his best, repeatedly landing blows on Jimmy. When Jack realizes that he is going to lose the bout despite the best efforts, he wants to last through the match. In the last round, as he realizes that Jimmy wants Jack to win on a foul, he conjures up an excuse, commits a foul instead, and lets Jimmy win. Though Jack loses the match, the loss is heroic and he is rich by $50,000 as he put his money on Jimmy Walcott winning the match. Towards the end of the story, when he comments, "It's funny how fast you can think when it means that much money," helps us understand that Jack comprehends the situation quickly and acts on it. The ending of the story reveals that Jack, unlike most sportsmen, is able to read the situation and think of himself. Hemingway doesn't build the character of Jack, but only reveals various facets of him. Each of the facets is antithetical to the carefully constructed image of American athletes. Thus, through Jack, Hemingway comments on the weaknesses, strengths, and psychological insecurities of elite athletes. Let us now examine the irony in 50 Grand. The plot of 50 Grand, like most successful short stories, has an unexpected ending. From the beginning of the story, it seems the fight is ill-matched. The boxers are antithetical to each other. Jack is aging while Jimmy is young. Jack wants to get over the bout while Jimmy is looking forward to winning it. The story seems to indicate that the match was fixed. However, if we were to read the story believing that the match was fixed, we would be surprised by the story's ending. The fight proceeds on unexpected lines. It was expected that Jack would lose the match forthright in the initial rounds. However, he gives a tough fight till the 8th round. From the 9th round onwards, Jimmy makes the fight a one-sided affair. As the last round begins, Jack is determined to last till the end of the round. Despite being pounded severely, Jack stays to fight. The narrator summarizes the situation lucidly as he says, his money was all right and now he wanted to finish it off right to please himself. He didn't want to be knocked out. Hence, the fight seems to be on the normal course. Jack's action seemed to be pragmatic. He never stood a chance of winning the fight. His action of placing money on Jimmy winning the fight does not seem to be an immoral one. It seems to be a pragmatic decision. Throughout the story, we are told Jimmy wants to win the championship badly. We come across Jimmy as an earnest fighter until he consciously commits fouls in the last round. It seems that Jimmy wants to lose the match. The match seems to have been fixed as to ensure that Jack won. Here, the unexpected twist occurs. Jack, who is badly hurt, thinks on his feet. He urges with the referee and convinces him that Jimmy's fouls were unintentional. As the fight proceeds, Jack quickly commits fouls and knocks out Jimmy. Thus, the ending of the story is surprising. If the result of the match was fixed beforehand, then one could argue that both the boxers were paid to lose the match. The irony of the story is that Jimmy, who is constructed as a serious, active, young, professional fighter, tries to lose the match. On the other hand, the reluctant, passive and aging Jack, who requires money the most, also wants to earn the respect of the crowd. The roles of the boxers are reversed. Jimmy, towards the end, comes across as a more money-minded person than Jack. Jimmy seems to be less concerned about moral issues. It is only due to Jack's intervention that the expected result is carried out. Now, let us examine the Hemingway Code in the short story 50 Grand. Hemingway often addressed the moral issues in his fiction. Most of his protagonists follow the Hemingway Code, which is a hypermasculine moral code. The moral code is a set of beliefs which the protagonist makes use of as they attempt to comprehend the world. The heroes who adhere to the code are termed Hemingway Code heroes. Most of such heroes have some sort of physical or psychological wound. The wounds symbolize the tragic flaws in the characters. The heroes need to overcome these flaws. As the protagonist overcomes these flaws, he either proves or reclaims his manhood. Most of Hemingway Code heroes suffer from a fear of dark. Philip Young, in his biography Ernest Hemingway, claims that Hemingway defined Code hero as an individual who offers and exemplifies certain principles of honor, courage and endurance, which in a life of tension and pain make a man a man. Most of the Code heroes heroically, patiently and honestly fight against the challenges of life despite knowing that they are ultimately bound to lose. They heroically face defeat and physical pain with enduring silence. They seldom show their emotion. They are only governed by their free will and will never allow the social or religious conventions dictate their actions. In other words, they act as their own agents and are willing to take responsibility for their activities. On an initial reading, it seems Jack doesn't adhere to the code. Earl Rowett believed that Jack was instrumental in fixing the match and argued that the act of deliberately throwing away the fight excluded Jack from the Hemingway Code. Other critics point out that the absence of the term courage in the story is indicative of Jack's exclusion from the Hemingway Code. More importantly, Jack does not exhibit any passion towards the fight till the end of the story. He does not betray any emotion during the training stages. He seems to possess little endurance. He is insecure about his wife and money. Jack's insomnia can be read as an indication of his fear of the dark. The fear of the dark is the only trait that Jack seems to be sharing with Hemingway Code heroes. However, towards the end of the fight, Jack redeems himself. He fights for his pride despite knowing that he is not good enough to beat Jimmy. He doesn't want to be knocked out and heroically endures the fight despite physical dangers. He fights honestly even as he knows that he is bound to lose the bout. When Jack realizes that Jimmy is bent on losing the fight, the immense physical and emotional pressure notwithstanding, Jack stands his ground. Regardless of his injuries, he thinks about the situation with enough clarity and finds professional reasons that allow the fight to continue. He bears immense pressure and physical pain with grace. The act of standing up, despite being badly injured and making the most appropriate decision under pressure, is indicative of physical courage. Jack, till the end of the story, doesn't seem to possess any such characteristics that signify Hemingway's heroes, but towards the end of the story, he emerges as one of the earliest of Hemingway's Code heroes. Dear learners, we hope you have immensely enjoyed the lesson 50 grand. We will see you in future for further classes. Thank you.